evening. How's it going? Woo! Utah Hockey Club gets a big win tonight over the Chicago Blackhawks. Important victory for Utah Hockey Club as we're getting to crunch time now. 59 games now in the hopper, 23 left for Utah Hockey Club this season, and the question is on everyone's mind, will Utah Hockey Club find a way to make the playoffs? Well, only if they take care of business against teams like Chicago, and that's what they did tonight. So congratulations, Utah Hockey Club. Big win for Utah Hockey Club. Oh, sorry, a little rusty here. We're back in the swing of things. My name is Keith Schertz. I run things here at Hive State Hockey, and we are grateful to see you here tonight and give you a chance to talk a little bit about the Utah Hockey Club's victory over the Chicago Blackhawks, 2-1. 2-1. I been a play-by-play guy. I love hockey and want to get into it a little bit. Want to talk about this team and a lot of the decision-making that's going to happen over the next couple weeks. A lot to transpire between now and the trade deadline, and a lot of things for the general manager, Bill Armstrong, to kind of monitor and think about as it relates to Utah Hockey Club and what this team needs to accomplish the rest of the season. So it'll be really fascinating to see what happens with this team as we continue to go forward here. I want to check one thing before I get too much further. And it looks like the stream's going okay. All right. So, Utah Hockey Club had the opportunity to go out and play against the Chicago Blackhawks coming back from the break. You know, they two big games against Vancouver and Chicago here. Next, they got Minnesota and then New Jersey. Really tough stretch there, that Minnesota-New Jersey stretch. But just want you to know that if they're going to make it, if they're going to get there, coming from behind and finding a way to defeat the Chicago Blackhawks had to happen. Had to. The way that they came back against Vancouver had to happen if they were going to make the playoffs, and it happened. So they've had two had-to-happen moments here, and it's been a really important stretch. It'll be fun to do a little bit of scoreboard watching and making sure that Calgary and Vancouver melt down a little bit while Utah Hockey Club catches up. Right now, 3 points away from making it into the playoffs. The problem is that both the teams that are in front of them that they need to leapfrog have played 57 games. Utah Hockey Club has played 59 games. So, lots of progress to be made for Utah Hockey Club, but I have to tell you, if they can continue to stack wins, of course, anything's possible. And the other thing that's really become an interesting thing to think about as it relates to this Utah Hockey Club team this season is with the trade deadline coming up, I believe it's March the 7th coming up, there are now 4 more games for UHC to play before the trade deadline. Right now, they're 3 points behind. You would look at that scenario and you'd say, well, let's push in. Let's see if we can get there. Let's see if there's a move to make. We're only, we've got $21 million of cap space. That makes it easy to be an attractive trade partner. And you could pick up a couple pieces, especially if there's pieces that you're comfortable moving on from. So it'll be fascinating to talk a little bit more about that in the show. That's one of the things that I want to get into, and potential people that we are trading away, and then we can talk a little bit on players that we may want to look at bringing in to the squad. I wanted to talk quickly, though. That was kind of a dicey game, right? First period, they go down 1-0. They give up the goal there, power play goal, excellent execution by the Chicago Blackhawks, and then they found a way. A nice goal late in the second period by Clayton Keller, and then a beautiful backhander by Lawson Krause, his 9th goal of the season. Lawson Krause finds a way to find the back of the net and get the game-winning goal for Utah Hockey Club. So it's nice to see the leadership of the team kind of lead out. You see an alternate captain get the game-winning goal. You get, Clayton Keller finding a way to get into the back of the net after playing hard, finding a way to get to kind of an area of the ice he doesn't like to get to. But he went down low, he went and battled, he got that rebound and was able to rocket it into the net. So a couple nice goals, and Karel Vejmelka continues to produce at a really high level for the Utah Hockey Club. He continues to be a great story this season. 21 shots saved on 22 shots taken. So, Veggie continues to be a really great story for this Utah Hockey Club. And it'll be interesting to see what they decide to do with all of these pieces going forward. But before, and it's the hard part that looms over all this, because as you take a look at the team and what they provided you tonight, it's interesting that they were able to execute at the level they were able to find ways to generate just a couple goals. That Chicago Blackhawks team is not a particularly great team. There was a lot of conversation from Clayton Keller in his intermission interview about how skilled and how good Chicago is. But Chicago is second to last in the Western Conference. Their season is blown up. They don't really have a ton to be playing for at this point. And Utah had a really, I don't want to say they were outclassed or outworked by Chicago. They weren't. The shot advantage was massive in favor of Utah Hockey Club, and that should tell you everything. It's almost always not the case that Utah Hockey Club gets more shots off. But I do think that it's an important thing to take a look at. Yeah, total shots, 36 for Utah, 22 for Chicago. So Utah turned up the heat, 14 shots in the second period, 14 shots in the third period, 36 shots. They're only able to get 2 in the back of the net. And, Soderblom played really well. He's coming along as a player for the Blackhawks, and so that's a good thing to see for him. But I think it's an important thing for them to find a way to get more goals in ways that you wouldn't expect. And so obviously a goal from Lawson Krause with some skill on the backhand, that's something nobody should expect after watching the first 59 games of this season. But Lawson Krause finds a way to get the game-winning goal. And the question is what is this team going to be? Where are they going to go after losing to the Kings after the Four Nations face-off, then coming from behind to beat the Vancouver Canucks, coming from behind to beat the Chicago Blackhawks? 3 points back. They've got 61 points right now. They are 3 points back from a playoff spot. Calgary has 64 points. But again, Calgary has 2 games in hand, meaning Utah's played 59 games. Calgary's only played 57 games. So will Utah Hockey Club be able to make up that difference? Well, it'll be interesting to see what Calgary does at the trade deadline. They're kind of in an interesting spot because they traded away so many terrific assets already, or they decided to not re-sign so many terrific players to this point of the season. And here we are. The Flames are right in it. They're in the playoff spot right now. After moving on from so many skilled players, they've already made a trade with the Philadelphia Flyers. They got rid of a player who was on he was going to be an unrestricted free agent, Kuzmenko. They felt like he wasn't a good culture fit. They moved on from Jacob Peltier. They were able to add Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee. So it'll be fascinating to see. Calgary has even more cap space than Utah. I believe they have like $40 or $50 million to their cap space. And so the question is Calgary going to push in? Are they going to make some sort of trade to try to make a move into the playoffs? Or are they okay with kind of where they are because they were looking at this season as a rebuild, and here they are, they're sitting in the playoffs. So it'll be fascinating to see what Calgary decides they're happy with. And so the good news is that it'll be interesting to see what they want to do. What will Utah Hockey Club decide to do? As my friend Scott says in the chat, hello Scott, it's good to see you. Mr. White, that makes me feel like Jesse Pinkman. Mr. White, yeah, they are in the playoff mix. And so the question is in the wild card hunt, they're there. They're playing meaningful games near the end of the season. This is one of the things Bill Armstrong was hoping would happen for this young group, is that they would have to play some really pressure-packed games and see what arose out of that. The question is how serious is Utah Hockey Club about trying to make the playoffs? Because you could make a couple trades and get into the mix, but then you're going to have to take on Connor Hellebuck. It looks like Winnipeg is going to cruise their way to that top seed in the West. I mean, they are just playing some great hockey in Winnipeg. So it'll be fascinating to take a look at, see what happens in terms of what the priorities are. Obviously, new team, new owner. Bringing playoff hockey to Utah would be really big in terms of trying to sell the sport. It'll bring more eyes onto this franchise than perhaps there have been up to this point, or it would get a night-to-night sort of attention. And so the question is how valuable is that to Ryan Smith? And what does he want to accomplish as it relates to that? So there'll be tons from a narrative standpoint about where they are in the playoff hunt to find out where they are. Scott says to him it's worth to get at least 2 games of playoff revenue. Yeah, I mean, sure. It would certainly sell merch. It would certainly bring a lot of eyeballs. Ticket prices would be great. There'd be a lot of revenue for the team. The question is yeah, I mean, what are the moves, Scott? What do you do? Do you move on? We've seen here that Matias Michelli has been a healthy scratch. We know that Matias Michelli all season, if you've followed along with me, even though it's been a while since I've been on, Matias Michelli is kind of a strange fit, isn't he? He's a really skilled player. It's just his 3rd season in the NHL. We're talking about a player that was 0.75 points a game for a long stretch of the first 2 seasons, and then this season it has fallen off a cliff. I think he's under half a point a game at this point. So the question is what is Matias Michelli? Is that what's going on there? Elliot Friedman said on the 32 Thoughts podcast that he suspected and thought that there should be attention given to potentially trading Matias Michelli. That's a very interesting prospect. Elliot Friedman is he knows everything. So the question is will Utah Hockey Club move on from a 3rd-year player who has shown real promise? The Finnish winger has obviously great passing ability, but he's a player that's only effective in the top 6 in your lineup, but he's not a good enough goal scorer to be in the top 6. But then if you play him in the 3rd line, he's not good enough at checking and being a matchup problem there. So he's this really strange player who's who probably should be a second-team power play specialist. He can't. He has all the skills offensively and needs to play with top 6 offensive players, but he can't stick in the top 6 because he doesn't have a very good shot, and so his finishing and goal scoring is too low to play in the top 6, but then if you play him in your bottom 6, he doesn't check. So he's this really awkward fit, and he doesn't necessarily fit with the things that Utah Hockey Club currently has. And he's not also a player that you would want to retain and then try to figure out how to tailor a fit to fit Matias Maccelli. Yeah, it says Maccelli, Scott saying, I don't think Maccelli was at the Four Nations. He was not. He wasn't selected. He wasn't selected to be with Finland at the Four Nations. Don't get that as Finland was short on talent. Yeah, look, Finland's, just to talk about that, there's a chance they could have used Maccelli's playmaking at the Four Nations. I think the way Finland likes to play is they like to try to grind out a 2-1 win, a 1-0 win. They're really committed to back checking. They're really committed to forechecking. And those are things that Matias Maccelli doesn't do. He doesn't back check. He doesn't forecheck. So incompatible with his home nation's style of hockey is, I think, the story on why he was not selected as a Four Nations face-off player. It also indicates that he wasn't in the mix for the Four Nations face-off unless his goal scoring went up significantly. I wonder if this also means Maccelli's unlikely to make the Olympic team next year. Doesn't mean he can't make it. It just means that the way it looks right now is it looks like Matias Maccelli will not be on Team Finland in the 2026 Winter Olympic Games. So he's just an awkward fit. And so the question is there a team out there that's looking at Matias Maccelli that says, ooh, distressed asset, young player, lots of skill, can really saucer pass and really find ways to play make out there, and Utah really wants to make a trade. So this wasn't said by Elliot Friedman. This is just Keith playing matchmaker. But there's teams that are out of it that have unrestricted free agents that are quite good. And so, for instance, what about on the... Oh, for heaven's sakes, his name. I had it just a second ago, and it just fell out of my head. On the New York Islanders, Brock Nelson is an unrestricted free agent. So is there a chance that you trade, say, Matias Maccelli and a second-round pick? Is that enough to get Brock Nelson? Maybe. Might take another draft pick. But Brock Nelson could be a good player to add to the mix. Do you take a look at trying to see the forever rumored to be in trades? Could you get your hands on Trevor Zegras from Anaheim? Is it true that there is some thoughts internally? This has been kind of rumored and reported a couple places as conversation that's happened. But is Utah Hockey Club busy waiting to see what happens with Mikko Rantanen? And whether or not he signs a contract with the Carolina Hurricanes before they act? Because why trade any of these players and use cap space on a guy like Brock Nelson or Trevor Zegras if you're comfortable paying, $14 million a year on an 8-year deal to Mikko Rantanen? So it'll be fascinating to see what happens. It'll be fascinating to see what happens. And the idea that Utah could pull in a free agent like a Mikko Rantanen becomes a very fascinating thing to think about, because Utah has not traditionally been able to pull in free agents. Not traditionally been able to pull in free agents. So it'll be really interesting to see what their priorities are. We're going to learn a lot. We are going to learn an awful lot about what is important to the Utah Hockey Club over the next 10 days or so. 4 more games to play. And honestly, it's really wild. But as the results come through, as they go out and play Minnesota later this week, and as they play New Jersey on March 1st, and then they get the Red Wings, and then they play Chicago on the trade deadline day. The next 3 games, that Minnesota, New Jersey, and Detroit game, if they lose all 3 of those games, Utah Hockey Club is selling. They're going to be trading. If they fall out of the playoff spots and do not have the opportunity, they're already out of the playoff spots, but have some distance between themselves and the playoff spots, if they get to a place where they're 8 points back after the next 3 games, if that's what happens, you're probably too many games out. With 20 games left, it'd be 19 games left. With 19 games left, there's just not enough time for you to make up the amount of games that you need in order to get there. Combine that with, I really think Calgary is going to make a move. It'll be fascinating to see what they do. Vancouver, of course, is really tough and, had a very weird year. But even with all the lack of chemistry and drama off the ice, there is Vancouver. They're really good. They got a chance. There's been some rumor that Brock Besser from the Vancouver Canucks could find his way to the Utah Hockey Club, maybe if that was a trade that they were looking at. But again, I don't see Vancouver trading with Utah when they're both competing for that final spot. Why is Vancouver busy helping Utah? Like, that one doesn't make that much sense to me. So it'll be really, really, really fun to see what is going to happen with this team as it relates to the trade deadline as it comes up. They may do nothing, and that would be interesting because it would show like a commitment to a long-term build. I don't know. It's also, if it's true, if they're thinking about Mikko Rantanen, I think there's a real chance that they're waiting to see. If Rantanen does not sign a deal with Carolina before March the 5th, they may think they have a shot there in the offseason. I don't know why they would think that. Maybe they know something about Mikko Rantanen and how he, as a Finnish player, he just would love Salt Lake City. If that's true, and we can get the best Finnish player in the world, outside of Alexander Barkov, to play in Salt Lake City and elect to choose to live in Salt Lake City for a long time, that would say a lot about the future of hockey in this market. That if you could make the argument that Utah can attract top-level free agents in the NHL when they've never been able to really attract top-level free agents in the NBA, this side of Carlos Boozer, which is the most successful free agent signing in the history of this market, Carlos Boozer. So if they're able to go out and attract a player like Mikko Rantanen, like, that would kind of shock me. But we'll see. We'll find out, won't we? So exciting times. And then the other players, it's just worth talking for a minute about the players that Utah has on expiring contracts and whether or not we see them as long-term pieces for Utah Hockey Club and whether or not they actually have trade value. I've mentioned this a few times, but here are the expiring contracts of the skaters. It's Nick Bjugstad. I don't think he's done much to show his pedigree and value. He's 30, 31 years old. I don't know that they're going to re-sign Nick Bukestad. It would have to be a pretty good discount there. I don't know that he's put enough on tape to make a contending team decide that they're happy to part with like a third round or a couple, second round and a third round pick or a couple, to go get Nick Bukestad. I don't know. I don't know that would be something other teams be interested in doing. Alexander Kerfoot is one of the players that is expiring. I could see a contending team deciding that they like the versatility of Kerfoot and the idea of adding him to your fourth line. That could be pretty attractive to a contender. Michael Carcone and his hard-working style and the upside of potentially being a goal scorer. Last year, he racked up 20 goals. He's not going to do that this year with the Utah Hockey Club. But maybe he was the leading goal scorer in the HL for a year. So anyway, he has the ability to score. Be interesting to see what happens. Ian Cole, maybe a player that other teams are interested in on the blue line. Is that a player that you'd be willing to let go of? You just let Valimaki go down. He wasn't picked up on waivers. What a fascinating story that is. Kind of tells you a lot about Juuso Valimaki and kind of his standing in the league. When we let Vladislav Kolyachonok out on waivers, Pittsburgh picked him up. Pittsburgh looked at Kolyachonok, was like, yeah, let's bring that guy into our franchise. Valimaki, $2 million a year. I think there's another year left on his deal. That certainly played into why teams didn't take him on the waivers. And at the same time, 26-year-old defenseman who's inconsistent. And then the last one is Olimata, another defensive player. And so the question again, it's like Ian Cole and Mata, you probably don't get rid of, right? If you're in the heat of it, if you're in the mix, those are players that you hang on to and try to go to war with and make the playoffs for. But again, these next three games against Minnesota, New Jersey, and Detroit, if, first of all, they have 2 games in hand up in Calgary. So if Calgary goes out and wins 2 games, we're not 3 points back. We're down 7, just like that, without even having to play. And then if we go out and lose to Minnesota, who's very good, very, very possible to lose in Minnesota. If we go out and lose to the Devils, very good team, right? Detroit, that's a game we probably shouldn't lose, but, we'll see how that goes. They're not a pushover. I mean, Dylan Larkin and Sider and Kane is on that team. So anyway, that's not a bad team, Detroit, but that's a game that you'd like to see Utah Hockey Club pick up. But even if they lose, 2 of the next 3, they're going to walk into this next section with, potentially a 7-point deficit. If both Calgary and Vancouver lose all the games, then it's a 3-point deficit, and it changes the story. So scoreboard watching is going to be huge here. But if they get to a place where they're 9-10 points out and we're near the trade deadline, I think Olimata and Ian Cole will be looked at as pieces that, if I could have Olimata as a third pair defenseman, and we're the Washington Capitals, maybe that's something that makes sense for them. And they can make a push and try to do something with those players to try to help them lift the cup. So there's that. And then the last piece is something that's at least to be talked about, but Karel Vejmelka is also an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year. Usually goalies do not get traded for. Usually it's hard to get a trade out there for goalies. Vejmelka's only had this season where he has shown to be really good. I don't know that he's a true number 1 overall goalkeeper. He's a good tandem goalkeeper. And the question is there a playoff team that is feeling like they need more depth at goalie, usually the answer is no, or, because you don't make the playoffs with bad goalkeeping. And the other thing to be aware of as it relates to Karel Vejmelka is they have the ability and have begun, according to reports, begun working on signing a contract with Karel Vejmelka. They've been underway trying to get a contract done with Karel Vejmelka for a couple weeks now. These things do take time. But again, keep your eye on this. Will they be announcing a Karel Vejmelka contract in the next 10 days? If they don't, it doesn't mean that he's going to get traded. But it may mean that Vejmelka may not be interested in re-signing here, or it may mean that Utah is not interested in paying the price tag that he and his agent believe they're owed. And again, the other piece on that is if the rumors are indeed true and Utah is planning on trying to go after Mikko Rantanen, if Rantanen does not sign a contract with Carolina, you cannot use cap space to pay like $6.5 or $7 million to Karel Vejmelka a year. So it'll be a really interesting thing for us to monitor as that goes along, is whether or not they sign Karel Vejmelka. And again, maybe the linchpin on all this is whether or not Carolina is able to close a deal with Mikko Rantanen. The other player, too, just if we're talking off-season, unrestricted free agents, the other big one that's coming up, and it looks like they're definitely going to be available, is Mitch Marner from Toronto. And the question is that a player that you commit, the giant contract to? Obviously, it's better to commit that contract to Mikko Rantanen, but maybe you take a look at a player like Mitch Marner. Obviously, very good goal scorer. May not be the sort of thing that Utah needs, but you'd have to think about that. I mean, there's no question about it. And then the other names that have been talked about in trades, obviously, Michelli is being highly speculated. Elliot Friedman, he has let that out of the bag, and he seems to know things. So my expectation is maybe there's a trade coming for Michelli. But again, I really think that Bill Armstrong is going to be making a decision about whether or not they're going to be buyers and try to acquire assets at the trade deadline, or sellers where they're trying to move guys like Olimata and maybe Kerfoot and find a way to, get value back for those guys to try to build to the future, since they're going to be unrestricted free agents and don't necessarily fit the Stanley Cup timeline of the rebuild for Utah Hockey Club. Okay, so wow, big long, conversation about what I suspect may be going on there, what the rumor mill is saying, and what a lot of people may be thinking is going on behind the scenes for Utah Hockey Club. But I do think, again, it is imperative for these players. If you're Sergachev, if you're Keller, if you're Krause, if you're Gunther, if you're Cooley, if you're the guys that are here, it seems like Lawson Krause is here, even though he's been rumored in trades. It would take a lot, because it seems like Andre Tourigny, the head coach, it seems like he's in love with Lawson Krause. Like he really likes that player. There was this hilarious moment in the broadcast tonight. I don't know if you picked up on it, but the sideline reporter, Sarah Merrifield, had a report that part of what's going on with Lawson Krause this year is that while he likes to score goals, part of why he's not scoring goals is because that is not his role on the team this year. Well, if that's the case, then he's playing his role of not scoring goals consistently very well. He's playing it great. If the point of Lawson Krause this season was to take a back seat while Logan Cooley and Dylan Guenther do all the goal scoring. He has done that incredibly well. It's garbage. It's just a report of like, yeah. While he'd like to score goals, it's not really expected that he score goals anymore. It's like, really? It'd be great if we put him on the ice and he scored some goals. That would be good. It was helpful tonight to have him score a goal. That was a really strange report. Obviously, it was what was reported on the sideline by the Utah Hockey Club reporter, Sarah Merrifield, but that's just a strange report. That's a really, really weird report. Well, we're not expecting him to score goals now. I mean, it's just like we're carrying water for Lawson Krause while he doesn't score goals. We like putting out right wingers that just don't score. That's what we like to do. Left wingers, excuse me. But anyway, I just thought that was a funny report. Something that made me chuckle. Oh, that's what the thing is this year. He's not scoring goals because we didn't ask him to score goals. We didn't tell him to score goals. In fact, his job is to not really do that this year. That was insane. What an insane report. Okay, that is it. Utah Hockey Club, again, good goalkeeping performance. Would have liked to see more goals go in, but again, sometimes the other guys want to win, and sometimes they play well too, and so that's okay. That's okay. The Blackhawks goalie, he played really great tonight, and he deserves credit for the good work that he did, but more credit goes to Utah Hockey Club. Totally outshot a Chicago team that's listless, that's out of it, will not be playing in the playoffs, and Utah puts them firmly into the kind of this really fun spot where the next 10 days will, change all the plans. And so given what the results are on the scoreboard for Vancouver and Calgary, and given what Utah Hockey Club does over the next 10 days, it will change everything about what the roster may look like in 2 weeks' time. So it will be a really fun influx. And it'll be fun to take a look at that. And also, I believe the Mikko Rantanen stuff. I believe we're waiting to see what happens with Mikko Rantanen, because I think Ryan Smith believes we can recruit Mikko Rantanen to Utah. I don't know if he's right, but I believe he believes that. But if he's not interested to go to Carolina, who I believe has an opportunity to pay him the most amount of money, I'm not sure why he's turning down Carolina so that he can come to Utah. It clearly, if it's not about the money, then the question is what's the scenario? And Utah's not as good as Carolina, so then it's about where you're living. And if it's about where you're living, it's like now we're thinking about Florida, we're thinking about New York, we're thinking about LA, right? Maybe. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Okay. Hey, I think those are all the thoughts I have following the game tonight. I was glad to see Utah pull it together. And find a way to get this win. Had they lost to Chicago tonight, that would have been a devastating loss. It would have taken away the good effort that they made to come back and beat Vancouver previously. And beyond that, I'm serious. Each of these losses, especially to these teams that are you need to take care of business against, like a Chicago Blackhawks, those losses are the thing that take you out of playoff contention. And so it was crucial, if the goal is to play the meaningful games down the stretch, that they took care of business tonight. They did that, and had they not, I think it would have become far more likely that they're sellers at the trade deadline. Okay, that is it for tonight's game. Again, thanks for hanging out with us tonight. Thanks for the comments that we had. That was fun, Scott. Appreciate that. My name's Keith Schertz. This has been After the Buzzer here on Hive State Hockey. Give us a little thumbs up in the chat if you've enjoyed this, and we'll see you again real soon. Have a good night.